Welcome to OCD 223. My name's Ryan. Today we're going to be taking the cases that we cleaned last time and running them through a full-length sizing and decapping die. One of the most important steps that we can take, along every step of the process, is to keep everything labeled. So if we have to walk away from our project, we know exactly where we were when we left off. So in preparation for lubricating the cases, first we're going to go ahead and put them in a case tray. This here holds 50. And then we're going to use Hornady one-shot case lubricant. On a safety note, case lubricant is highly flammable, so make sure you do your lubricating outside and away from any open sources of flame or sparks. One of the things they don't tell you on the instructions is that you need to shake the can for at least a minute before you use it, or it just won't lubricate quite right. You want to get everything completely mixed, so a full minute of shaking. Spray a light coat of case lubricant from each of the 4 sides. After that, give them about a minute to dry before we do any further sizing work. While your case is dry, our next step is to disassemble the sizing die and thoroughly clean the inside of it. We want to make sure that there's no case lubricant from previous operations inside. It's very important that you also do not mix lubricants. You don't mix wax and spray case lube, for example. Using ordinary cotton-tipped Q-tips, we're going to go ahead and clean out the inside of the sizing die. We're also going to remove the decapping pin, which we do by holding the body and unscrewing the top. We're going to clean the length of this as well to remove any leftover case lubricant from the last sizing operation. Gently swirl a solvent-soaked Q-tip in the body of the sizing die to remove any leftover case lubricant as well as any brass particles that may have become trapped during the last sizing operation. Next, grab a clean paper towel and put a little solvent on that and use that to clean off the exterior of the decapping rod. And then lastly, take a clean Q-tip and make sure that there's no lube anywhere on that. Once that's clean, we can reassemble the die by threading the decapping rod into the top of the body of the die. This assembly here is the decapping rod and expander ball assembly. This part here is the expander ball. The long thin shaft is called the spindle. When we set up the full-length sizing die and the decapping rod in it, we need to make sure that something happens. If you'll notice, there's a small hole in the middle of the body of the die. That is a vent hole that allows excess lubricant and the air that's forced out of the body of the die during the sizing operation to escape. Otherwise it can crush the brass. So it's important that when we assemble this, that the bottom third of the expander ball lines up with the hole in the sizing die. We're now going to spray a little bit of case lube into the body of the die. Give that about a minute or so to dry. With the die body now installed in the press, this is how it works. You place a piece of brass on the lower shelf of the press, and as you pull the handle, it forces it up and inside of the die body. As that happens, the full-length sizing die will force the brass back to its original shape so that it perfectly fits the chamber of your rifle. As it's doing that, the decapping pin will extend through the brass case and out the bottom. It will then force the primer out the bottom of the case body. And in this case, we're using a Forster press, so the old primer will be forced out and it will fall through this tube and will be collected in a jar below the press. The last thing we need to do before we actually run the press is to lubricate all of the moving parts. So anything that slides or pivots needs a little bit of gun lubricant. Doesn't take much. And then wipe off all of the excess so that it doesn't attract dirt. That will not only keep your press functioning like new, but keep it looking like new as well. With the inside of your full-length sizing and decapping die lubricated, and all of the hinges and moving points on your press lubricated, now all that's left to do is resize our cases. Put the bottom of the case in the shell holder, grab the handle, push down firmly, we now have no more primer in the case. The case is sized perfectly for the chamber of a standard 223 Remington. Once you get a rhythm going, you'd be surprised just how fast you can go through 50 cases. Once you have all your cases sized and decapped, time to label everything. So this is Lake City 08. Been fired 5 times, so I do 5X. It's been trimmed twice. It's T2. And it is full length sized and decapped. That is ready to re-clean and flash hole uniform, FHU. So in our next installment of OCD 223, we'll be flash hole uniforming and re-cleaning our brass so that we can re-prime it and then charge it.